You have done this before. You have sat beside someone who could not get up on their own, and you held a cup of water to their mouth. You have pulled a blanket over a shoulder that wasn't yours. You have stayed in a room that smelled like sickness, when every easy part of you wanted to leave, and you stayed anyway. You did not do it to be paid back. The person could give you nothing, and still your hands knew exactly what to do. That instinct feels modern. It feels like something civilization taught you, like a rule you were raised into, a kindness invented somewhere along the way. It is not. It is older than your language, older than farming, older than the wheel, older than the first word ever spoken, older than your species, and it left marks on bone we can still read. Here is the strange part. For most of the time humans have existed, the world was supposed to be ruthless. No medicine, no hospitals, no surplus. Every calorie had to be hunted, dug, or carried. The picture you were handed in school is simple. The strong survived, the weak did not. If you could not keep up with the group left you behind because the group could not afford you. In that world, an injury that stopped you from walking was a death sentence. A blindness that stopped you from hunting was a death sentence. A body that needed to be fed, cleaned, and carried for years should have been impossible. There was no margin. There was no spare food for a mouth that could not work for it. Nature does not subsidize the helpless. So the bones of the deep past should all tell the same story. They should belong to people who died the moment they could no longer provide for themselves. But some of them don't. Some skeletons belong to people who were broken, blind, paralyzed, and who then kept living. For years, for decades, long after their own bodies stopped being able to keep them alive. Which leaves only one question. If they could not survive alone, then who was keeping them alive? Walk into a cave in the mountains of northern Iraq. It is called Shanidar. In 1957, an archaeologist named Ralph Solecki, working out of Columbia University, lifts a Neanderthal skeleton out of the ground. The fossil gets a number, Shanidar 1. The people who study him give him a name, Nandy. Read his bones the way the scientists at the Smithsonian read them, and a life appears. When he was still young, something crushed the left side of his head. The blow likely blinded his left eye. It damaged the part of his brain that controls the right side of his body, and his right arm withered into something he could barely use. Some accounts say it was lost below the elbow entirely. His right leg was damaged too. One of the bones in his right foot carries a healed fracture, which means he walked with a limp on a foot that had once been broken. Now hold all of that in one body at once. Half blind, one arm useless, a dragging, painful leg. In a world where survival meant running down animals and climbing rock, this was a man who could do almost none of it. He should have died young. He didn't. Every single one of his injuries shows signs of healing. Bone only heals if you go on living. Nandy lived to somewhere between 35 and 45 years old, genuinely old for a Neanderthal. For years, maybe decades, after his body failed him, he was still here. The Smithsonian says it plainly. He probably could not have survived without the care of his group. Someone fed a man who could not hunt. Someone stayed with a man who could not keep up. But here is where it gets stranger. Shanidar 1 could still walk badly. He could still do something. You could almost argue he earned his place. So go to a case where that argument falls apart completely. Travel forward in time and across the world, to a Neolithic burial ground in northern Vietnam called Man Bac. Among the graves, archaeologists find a young man. In the research, he is known as Burial 9. Two scientists from the Australian National University, Lorna Tilley and Mark Oxenham, publish his story in 2011 in the International Journal of Paleopathology. They use it to build an entire new method. They call it the bioarchaeology of care. Burial 9 was a man in his 20s. His spine at the neck was fused solid. His arm and leg bones are thin and wasted, the bones of someone whose limbs barely moved for years. The diagnosis is a condition called Klippel-Feil syndrome. The reality of it is this: he was paralyzed. Somewhere between the waist down and the neck down, his body did not answer him. And he lived like that for about 10 years. And it only gets harder from here. Think about what 10 years means with a body that cannot move. He did not feed himself. Someone fed him. He did not clean himself. Someone cleaned him. He could not turn over in the night to keep his skin from breaking down, could not sit up, could not carry his own weight a single step. For roughly a decade, in a hunter-gatherer world with no soft margin at all, another set of hands did everything a living body needs every day without a single day off. He gave nothing back that we can measure. No hunting, no gathering, no work, and the group kept him for 10 years anyway. That is not survival of the fittest. That is something else. And this is the part you should sit with, because this is still running inside you. Your body has not forgotten the program these bones are written in. When you see someone fall, you move toward them before you decide to. When someone cries near you, something in your chest pulls tight on its own. You wince when a stranger is hurt. You feel it in your face, that flinch before a single thought arrives. That is not manners. That is not your upbringing. It runs under all of that, in the same place it ran for the people who kept Nandy alive. You have felt the pull to care for someone who could do nothing for you in return. A sick parent, a newborn, a dying friend, pet, a stranger on the side of a road. And it never once asked you what you would get back. That feeling is not weakness the world trained out of the strong. It is one of the oldest things our kind does. Before we wrote anything down, before we built anything that lasted, we were already staying in the room with the people who could not leave it. If you'd rather sit with a thing like this than scroll past it, take a second and subscribe. Wondering about exactly this is the whole reason this channel exists. Then stay with me. These bones aren't done. The bones are not telling you about them. They are telling you about you. And it goes back further than you are ready for. Return to the Neanderthals, to a skeleton found in France in 1908. They call him the Old Man of La Chapelle. He is around 60,000 years old, and by the time he died he was wrecked by arthritis and had lost most of his teeth. Lost them so long before death that the bone of his jaw had healed smooth over the empty sockets. A mouth like that cannot chew, which means for him to keep eating, it is likely that someone else was preparing his food soft enough to swallow. Someone ground the world down small enough for a toothless old man to live on. Then go deeper still, to a cave in Spain called the Cima de los Huesos, the pit of bones, hundreds of thousands of years old. There, scientists led by Ana Gracia and Juan Luis Arzuaga found the skull of a child. In their 2009 paper in PNAS, they describe a rare deformity of the skull, present from before birth, almost certainly tied to motor and cognitive problems. A child who, by every harsh rule of that ancient world, should not have lasted. And that child lived for years. Pull back and look at the whole span. A child hundreds of thousands of years ago. An old man 60,000. A blind hunter 40,000. Paralyzed young man 4,000. Different species. Different continents. Different eras with nothing else in common. And in every one of them the same impossible fact. A person who could not survive alone, surviving anyway because somebody decided they would not be left behind. Not once. Not by accident. Again and again, across the whole long dark of human history, the same choice gets made by people who had every reason to make the other one. We still do not fully know why. We cannot climb inside a Neanderthal's chest and feel what moved them. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was something we do not have a word for yet. The bones only tell us what was done, never why it was done. But they tell us this much and it does not bend. Long before we were modern, long before we were even fully us, we were already choosing to keep the ones who could not keep themselves. The strong stayed with the broken. The well carried the sick. And nobody wrote it down because nobody had to. It was simply what we did. The instinct in your hands is older than your name. Older than your species. And it is still the most human thing about you. These same people who would not abandon the living also would not abandon the dead. For 12 years, scientists dug to find out whether Neanderthals buried their own, on purpose with care. What they found is sitting right there on the screen, and it is the other half of this story.